Hi there Civic owners. Today in your 2017 Honda Civic, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Blue Ox's Baseplate. There's 5 main components you'll need when flat towing your vehicle behind your motorhome. First thing you'll need is your tow bar, which is the connection between your motorhome and your vehicle. On your vehicle you'll also need your Baseplate, which is the connection point for your tow bar to attach. You'll need safety cables, which is a supplemental connection in addition to your tow bar. You'll need your diode wiring, which takes all the lighting signals on your motorhome and transfers them to the lights at the back of your vehicle so people behind you will know your intentions when going down the road. And lastly, you'll need your supplemental braking system, which will apply the brakes in your vehicle when you're hitting the brakes in your motorhome. And this is what our Baseplate looks like when it's installed. It is going to pass through our bumper, so it's installed behind it, but it still maintains a fairly good factory look when it's installed. The black powder coat finish helps it seamlessly integrate into the black plastic of our bumper. Located in the front, we have a mounting location for our wiring, which also makes a great spot for any other brackets that you may want to install, such as for your airline for your braking system. Your breakaway switch also has a mounting location, and everything when it's installed here you can see pass through our bumper, so we didn't even have to trim around a lot of this stuff. You will need to do some minor trimming around where your tow bar would connect to the Baseplate. Our safety chain connections also pass right through the bumper without any trimming, and they stick out far enough that makes it easy to connect our safety chains, but not too far to when we're walking by we're going to be hitting our shins on it. When you're ready to use your tow bar, you can insert the tow bar ends into your Baseplate. These come with the Baseplate and provide a connection point that will attach to any Blue Ox tow bar. If you have another tow bar that is not a Blue Ox model, you can purchase adapters here at etrailer.com so you can put the ends on that will mesh with your Baseplate connection point here. Compared to other Blue Ox Baseplates I've installed, the one that installs on your Civic here is actually one of the easiest ones I've done. It will completely replace the bumper beam behind your fascia here, and it will attach right onto those factory mounting locations that your bumper beam was on. In most cases, you have to do a lot of drilling to get Baseplates installed, but with this one, it hooks pretty much directly right up to where your bumper was, making it so much faster and so much easier on your body since you don't have to do all that drilling. Now that we've gone over some of the features, let's go over the installation together so you can have the confidence to do it at home. We'll begin our installation at the front of the vehicle with our hood open. We're going to remove the plastic panel here at the top. There's 9 push pins we'll need to take out. You can use a flat-bladed screwdriver or your trim panel remover tool. To remove the push pin, take your tool and pop out the center tab first. So use the corner to get underneath the tab and then just pop that up. Once the center is popped up, you can pull the whole tab out. We're going to repeat that for the remaining 8 pins. Once you've removed all the pins, the whole panel will come off and we'll set it aside. With the black panel removed, we'll have 2 pins on each side. We're going to take those out now. One of them comes out in the exact same manner and looks identical. That's going to be the one here towards the center. And the one on the opposite side, it comes out very similarly. It just has a slightly different look with little slots to be able to fit your screwdriver in. We'll then repeat that on this side as well. We're not going to be taking this whole chrome strip out at this time. We're just making sure that it's loose to make it easier to get our fascia off it later. We're now on the driver's side wheel well. There are 2 screws we're going to need to remove from the wheel well using a Phillips head screwdriver. Once you've got the 2 screws removed from this side, we're going to remove the 2 screws from the opposite side as well. We'll now need to remove the 7 push pins located across the bottom. These come out just like the ones on top. Now you will notice that there are 2 separate sets of push pins here in the middle. We want the push pins that are slightly towards the rear, so not this front row, but this row here. We'll then need to remove 1 bolt on each side from the bottom. These are going to be way out on the outside. We're going to use a 10mm socket to remove it. And then if we come in a little bit, we'll also find a screw here that we're going to use an Allen key to remove as well. We can now start peeling our fascia off. So start on one side and gently start pulling outward. To help you get it released, you could use a screwdriver or something a little bit safer like a plastic trim panel tool. And you can get down in there and pull up on the little tabs. You'll be able to see these tabs a little easier once I get the fascia off, but they grip onto the slots on our fascia here. Once we've got it released this far on this side, we're going to go ahead and get the opposite side popped out this far as well. The chrome strip here on the top does have a couple points that it snaps in, and you want to pull straight forward to get it to come out of those. You can see it's popped out of that one there, and there's another one that's a little further down here as well. So we're going to gently pull that forward to snap that one off, and then we're going to also repeat that on the opposite side. Now that we've got it released at the top and on our sides on both sides, we can roll it forward some. You can see here we've got our fog light, so we'll disconnect the connector that goes to the light by pushing it on the release tab and then pulling down on the connector. We'll check our other side and do the same thing. We can now take our fascia and set it aside where it won't get damaged. If you need a place to set it, you can use the etrailer box that your components were shipped in. The temperature sensor located on top of your bumper beam we'll remove using our trim panel tool. Get underneath the connector there, and we're going to separate the whole thing from the bumper beam. We're also going to do that here on the back side and pop it off of there as well. We're now going to remove the headlight assemblies from both sides. There are 5 bolts that hold it in. You can see that we've got 2 here on the top. There are 2 here on the side, and then here in the front you'll have one that goes way back. There's kind of a half moon little cutout there that you'll need your extension for to get way back in there. With all the bolts removed, we can tip our headlight assembly up on the inside first. This will allow us to then pop up the back here. You've got a couple of tabs, so you just got to work each one loose at a time. We'll slide it out some to give us better access to the back here, where we can disconnect it from our bulbs. Each one just has a release tab you press in and pull off, very similar to the connectors that we had in our lights when we took our fascia off. And a couple of the wires here you can see are attached to the top. We can remove those with our trim panel tool. Okay. We'll then set our assembly aside and repeat this on the other side. We also need to remove the 2 pins here on the back side of our bumper beam that hold on this plastic shroud. Now these are a little bit difficult to get to due to the shape that we've got here, but they remove just like the rest of the pins that we have taken out by popping out the center and then removing the rest of the tab. You want to be careful when you're working in here as you're near your condenser, and you don't want to touch that with any tools. Once you've got the center popped out, we can pull the whole thing out. We can now remove the bolts holding our bumper beam on. Now you do have several different sets of bolts. We have 14mm head bolts here, 10mm head there, and 12 here on the side. We're going to start with our 14mm head bolts, and we're going to remove 4 on each side. There's 2 on top, 2 on bottom on each side. We can then lift up on our bumper beam. You have to lift up first to get these released from here, and then we can go straight out. You have to shimmy it back and forth just a little bit to get it off the plastic prongs here. But once you've got it slid off, we can just set this aside. We'll now need to remove the plastic shielding that surrounds our condenser here. There's a pin on top we're going to need to pop out. This is just like all the rest. We're then going to remove the 2 located here on the side and down here also at the bottom where it attaches to our lower panel. Your wire is also attached to it with one of the pegs there, so use your trim panel tool or screwdriver and just pop that off as well. Now that we've got our pins removed, we can take this whole assembly off and set it aside. Now you'll see here that it does wrap around the hose Now you can finagle it out of here, and I'm going to continue working at it to get it out so we don't damage it. But this is not going to be reinstalled, so you could just cut it to make getting this out of here a lot easier. But we're going to try and save it for our customer in the event that they ever want to return the vehicle to stock. With our paneling out of the way, we can then come to our attachment point where our bumper beam was attached. There's a hook here that our bumper beam was sitting on that kept it from falling off. We took all the hardware out. We need to take that off so that way we can attach our base plate completely flush up against this piece. So we're just going to use a reciprocating saw here to cut this off. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. We don't have to worry about these since we won't be reinstalling the bumper. We'll now need to take our turbo pipe out of the way for the turbo cooler here. So there's 2 bolts here we're going to remove using a 10mm socket. And this is just temporary. We just need to get it out of the way so we can get our base plate worked in. So this side will pop out. Make sure you do not lose your gasket. You can either leave it on the intercooler side or you could take it off and set it somewhere where you know you're not going to lose it. We're then going to come up here on top and loosen the hose clamp. And then work our hose off of there. Our turbo pipe is now loose, but it's still held in place by 1 bolt. So follow the pipe down and you'll see this bolt. We can remove it with a 10mm socket as well. And now we can slide our whole pipe assembly out of the way. We'll now go to our base plate. We need to do a little bit of prep on it. The 3/8 bolts that come in our kit, we're going to place a lock washer on it, followed by a flat washer. And then we can take our support straps that come in our kit, and they're going to slide into the ends. And the weld nuts in our strap is going to line up with the holes in the side of our base plate. So we're going to thread our bolts into those. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. And then we want to snug these down, but when we snug it down, we want to try to make it as level as possible. So we've got this sitting on a level surface. So we're now holding it as straight as possible and snugging them down. We're going to use a 14mm socket to do so. We can now take our base plate and we're going to slide it into position. Once you've got it slid up, we're going to reattach it using the factory hardware that we had taken out of our bumper beam. We're just going to go ahead and get one started on this side, and then we'll get one started on the other side as well. And that'll hold our base plate up, making it easier to install the rest of our hardware. This is going to reattach using the factory hardware that we had removed from our bumper beam. So we're just going to get all of those started. And then we're going to put our 10mm ones in here. The 12mm ones here on the outside have no place to attach on our base plate. We'll then want to prepare the large hardware. This is the large bolt that comes in our kit with a lock washer and a flat washer. And these are going to thread into the straps that we had attached to the base plate. They line up with holes that are pre-existing in your frame when we slid them in. So these ones are just going to go in the side here and thread into those. You may have to move your base plate up and down a little bit, in and out, just a touch, just to get it to line up to thread in. Now that we've got all the hardware lined up to where it will install, we can take them all back out one at a time, put some red Loctite on each of our bolts, put them back in, and then we'll tighten them all down once we've done that to each bolt. Every bolt that holds our base plate onto the vehicle, as well as the straps that we have that go into our base plate here, will receive the red Loctite. If you need some red Loctite, you can pick some up here at etrailer.com. Once we put the Loctite on, there's a specific order we want to tighten our bolts down in. We'll tighten down the 14mm head bolts first, followed by the 10mm head bolts. Then we'll do our side bolts with a 15/16 socket. And lastly, the strap side bolts that go into our base plate using a 9/16 socket. We can then go back and torque all of our hardware to the specifications found in our instructions. We're torquing our bolts in the same order that we tightened them down. We can now install our supplemental safety cables. These will wrap around the frame and then connect to our base plate, providing us with a supplemental connection in addition to the hardware here in the event of a catastrophic disconnect. We're going to slide it in through the opening here. We can reach around the frame, bring it around. We're going to attach it to the safety chain loop here. So we're just going to bring it through both of the eyelets on there, bring it through our base plate here, and then we can tighten these down. We're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. You'll receive some long zip ties that come in your kit. They're used to reattach your temperature sensor, but since we get 2 of them, we're going to be using one here for our safety cable on the passenger side. Because what I've noticed when you wrap it around the frame here, you can see your pulleys here and where your drive belt is. They're very close to where this cable is going to pass through, and if you just have a bunch of slack there, it's possible that they may rub on this cable. So what I'm going to do is pull the cable nice and tight around the frame, which is going to keep it away from those pulleys, and I'm going to zip tie it to the base plate here. This is going to ensure that our cable stays out of the way of our pulleys, but in the event we do have a catastrophic disconnect, this zip tie will break and our cable will then be able to function as it's supposed to. We're then going to use the other zip tie that came in our kit to secure that temperature sensor back here towards the center of our base plate. We can then reinstall our turbo pipe. Push the hose on top. Get our bolts started down here. Make sure that your gasket is installed. So we've got ours in there. Start our bolts. And then before we tighten those down, I like to get the other bolt here started as well, the one that just kind of holds it in place. At this point now, our base plate is installed, and we can reinstall the fascia in reverse order. When you go to reinstall it in reverse order, you'll want to hold it up there and mark your fascia to trim out for the components here at the front. So you've got where your tow bar is going to attach there, your safety cables, your wiring if you're mounting that up, your breakaway switch if you've got a braking system you're going to install, and potentially other components depending on what all you want in your flat tow setup. Now what I recommend at this point, before putting your fascia back on and trimming everything out, you should install the rest of your flat tow components at this time because it's going to make the installation easier and it's going to save you a bunch of time. So we're going to go ahead and do our diode wiring, our braking system, get all that stuff completed, then we're going to come back and put our fascia back on, and we'll show you how we've got it trimmed out at that time. We've now completed the rest of our flat tow installation, and we're getting ready to put our fascia back on. To know where we need to trim, we want to hold it up there and kind of test fit where everything's going to line up. Now that we've got it kind of mocked up here, you can see that our base plate is hitting on the bar here, it's hitting here. Our components will pass through here for our breakaway switch and here for our wiring. So we're going to go ahead and mark these so we can trim these out on each side. Then we're just going to use some tin snips to cut those out. Once you've got this side cut out, we're going to repeat the same process over on the other side. Any cuts you make, you can then go back and clean up with a file or a razor knife to knock off those rough edges and make it look a little smoother. We're now rechecking our fit, and it looks pretty good. Looks like everything's going to pass through. So we can go ahead and finish reinstalling our fascia in reverse order of how we removed it off. And then we'll just rehook up our 6-pole here and our stuff back to our bracket. When putting your fascia back on, don't forget to plug in your fog lights and any other electrical connectors that you may have disconnected from it. We've got our fascia reinstalled, and this is what it's going to look like here at the front. Our wiring is going to be able to pass through. We had to do minimal trimming for our base plate to fit as well. And that completes our installation of Blue Ox's base plate on your 2017 Honda Civic.